Welcome on in, golf fans. It's your boy Gsluke here with our round 4 live stream for the Rocket Mortgage Classic. First off, hopefully you're having a fantastic Saturday and are ready to talk some golf action for the final round of this week. So first off, going to start with the golf course, a look at the weather forecast for tomorrow. Make sure we're all on the same page and know what to expect from those course conditions. And then afterwards, we'll talk through some PGA DFS for tomorrow, some strategy, a few players that I'll be taking in my lineups. And then towards the end of this live stream, going to focus on the prop side of things. So going to start that off with a look at some of our prop averages, the stat averages from this golf course. And then after that, look at the Underdog and Prize Picks boards and try and give you guys some value. So a lot that we're going to go through. Just wanted to set the table right there. And whether you're watching this on replay, we appreciate you guys stopping on by, or whether you're already down there in the live chat. First off, welcome on in. Hopefully you're having that solid evening. First thing I want you to do, whether you're watching this in replay or here live, is smash that like button for me. And then if you're watching this live, say hi down there in live chat. And if you're watching this on replay, go ahead and comment down below who you've got winning this golf tournament. So first off, we got Antonio, Nathan, Steven down there. Welcome on into the live stream. So we'll start this off with a look at our partner, our sponsor for the stream, which of course is the guys over there at the Ship It Nation. They are a source for all your needs with DFS, whether it's PGA DFS like you have here, or a variety of different other sports. You've got basketball covered over there, both types of football, whether it's college or pros. You've got MMA, like I'm sweating out here tonight, NHL, NASCAR, you name it, all those different sports covered under one umbrella. And the beauty of Ship It Nation is that they don't price gouge it. It's very realistic, very reasonable when it comes to the price tag over there. And it's led by actual winners out there that take down GPP. So check them out if you guys haven't already. They're a great GPP resource for all of your needs. Their projections also great for cash contests. They have a lot of DFS education tools on there. Their Shiptimizer, which I used to go out there and build some MMA lineups tonight, which depending on how this main card goes, we'll have to see how the ROI looks. So it's looking pretty solid so far. And because of the fact that we have that main card tonight, this live stream is going to be kept a little bit quicker. So my goal on this, the cutoff is 10 o'clock because that's when the MMA main card starts. So we've only got about 28 minutes to get through all of this. So there's not going to be very much yapping. It's going to be a lot of information and a few things cut out that I don't think are as necessary as some of the other segments. So let's start off with a look at the golf course. So first off, course conditions were pretty flat no matter when you played. So the later starters, quote unquote, got an easier golf course, but it wasn't really from the conditions perspective. A lot of that was likely due to the talent level of some of your later starters, where the top end of the leaderboard, your Cam Youngs, your Akshay Bhatias, for example, were teeing off in some of the last groups. Now, because it was threesomes off of both tees, you also had some of your guys that just made the cut also going off late. So it's hard to really read into it too much. But when it's only a 0.08 shot difference, right? 8/100ths of a shot out there, I mean, you'd be nitpicking anyways, right? Looking between the quote unquote AM and PM guys. So the course played really easy. I told you guys, even with the windy conditions, that cut line, the fact that they'd get a bunch of rain would make conditions pretty easy. And that's exactly what we got out there. So I was pretty stoked to see that. It gave us a profitable day over there from the prop side. And even with some windy conditions out here Sunday, it's likely going to be a lot of the same. Now, the one key difference out here from the weather is first off that the morning is actually a little bit windier than the afternoon. And if we take a look at the tee time spread, you'll see that it's twosomes off of hole number 1, which is great from the viewing perspective, great for betting props. It gives us a wider spread of time to go out there and add some live bets, which I always like out there for any given slate, and also gives us the potential for a weather edge. But unfortunately, the morning guys actually have slightly higher wind gust. So you can see over here on the HRRR model that they've got the wind gusts in the 25, 26 mile an hour range when play is going to start. And as the day goes on, you can see from the sustained and the wind gust perspective, it tends to calm down a little bit. And as the day goes on, we're going to get a lot of the better players, your guys in form, in contention, playing out there in the afternoon that are going to go out there and likely produce better than the guys that are out there towards last place. So I think that the PM wave is likely getting the better side of the draw, which doesn't mean that we can only play PM guys. Right? If the AM side had the better side of the draw, we couldn't only play AM guys either, right? Because we got to remember, for Sunday Showdown in particular, that we've got those pesky placement points to worry about. And though the PM guys, the guys starting with the most placement points, are the guys that are getting the better side of the draw, we can't play all of those guys either because they're also going to be super chalky. So it's an interesting slate where I think you might want to take a little bit more chalk than usual, just because I think the PM guys are getting the better side of the draw. However, that doesn't mean that you only want to play guys that are going off later. So I'll probably have 3 guys that are starting towards the top end of the board in all my lineups. 4, I guess, if I'm at a single entry or a cash kind of build. But in large field GPPs, I'm going to have at least 2 or 3 pivot plays in all my lineups that are starting towards the middle half or early half of tee time. So, we can talk about the weather all we want for Sunday Showdown, but as per usual, usual business around here, you can't lean into it too much either direction because of those placement points in play. So let's turn our attention to that. Like I said, we've got to keep this moving rather quickly because I want to get over there to the MMA. And it's not just because I want to watch it or sweat out my lineups. I'm meeting up with some buddies, or at least they're coming over here, actually. I don't have to go anywhere to go out there and watch them, but they're going to be here at 10. So I'm not going to leave them waiting too long. So, all right, let's talk through some of our top plays here. So towards the top end of the board, and actually, I guess we'll catch up on some questions before we talk into our top plays. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to catch up on any questions down there right now, any comments down there in chat. And then afterwards, I'm going to talk through all of the plays I have highlighted. And then if you have any more questions, toss them down in chat, right, where we're talking through some of my plays. And then I'll talk through those afterwards. Again, trying to keep this a little bit more streamlined this time just because of the time limit. What's going on, Nathan? You said bets aside, who do I think wins? If I just had to give you one name, it's Akshay Bhatia. Akshay has been in incredible form, not just this week, but over the last month, regardless of where he's been playing. It's been a variety of different golf courses as well, seemingly no matter the type of setup, whether it's soft, firm, and fast, whether it's difficult, easy, like you see this week, travelers. He's been great. He's been very consistent. So I like Akshay. I think that, he's a winner on tour. I think he can kind of rely on that a little bit. And Cam Young, as much as I'd like to say that he'd win, he'd be the guy that monetarily I'd benefit the most from. I don't know if he's got the stones like Akshay does. What's going on, Deacon? And you said, what's up? I'm doing well myself, man. Hopefully you're doing well yourself there too. And he said, smash that like button. You heard him, right? I asked you guys a little bit earlier, but for those of you that are just tuning on in, go ahead and smash that like button, caress it a little bit as you guys head on in here and pump those numbers up. What's going on, Paul? Said, first time listening in the car, you cranked it up to 10. Got to get some interesting looks. Oh my gosh. If you have this on max volume out, yeah, like you said, you're going to get a few side eyes, that's for sure. What's going on, Michael? Montgomery brought down the afternoon score. Yeah, he didn't have a great day, huh? He started way under par and ended up -6. Yeah, I thought it was a mistake at first. I import my scores, and I was taking a look at his current score, and I was like, hey, he started like -10. How is he -6? And then I looked at the scorecard. Brian Ortega just ruined your DFS lineup. Let's get it for round 4. Let me see. So did he lose? I took both sides of that fight. So I guess it depends what happened. If it was like some shitty decision, that would probably be the worst case for me. So let's see. Who won? Oh, wait. Ortega hasn't fought yet, dude. All right. Or has he? Or am I completely shot? Or did the fight get canceled? Is that why I'm not seeing it on here? Oh, is that what happened? Dude, that's terrible. I've had both sides of that fight, so I got double massacred there. Hey, that's all right. I played a shit ton of lineups, so I have plenty without them too, so I'm good. I think I played like a solid 25% of both sides. So it's not like I went like 50-50 and like took 100% of that fight, so we're good. I can see if you did, you'd probably be down bad right now, right? What's going on, Barry? Your boy. How about those Dunlap and Hostler calls? Absolutely. Let's crush round 4. Absolutely, my man. Dan Ige is the new fighter. Ortega is sick. Lopez. Wait, so they are fighting. They're changing up the fight. That's pretty sick. And Dan Ige, I guess, taking that on just a few hours' notice. That's pretty badass from him. I guess they probably had him as that backup fighter, but yeah, Ortega being sick. I wish we would have known a lot about that beforehand. I wish that would have been a little bit better published, but hey, so it goes. I'd rather us have a fight than not. So good for Lopez still getting his points and whatnot. All right, let's talk through some of our top plays. Like I said, if you have any players you want to point out, let me know, but we're going to keep this thing moving rather quickly. So up top, you're likely going to have to eat some chalk. And like I said, with the placement points, you're going to need the winner. You're probably going to need at least 2 other guys that are finishing top 5. I think a good spot to take that chalk is up top. Now, the alternative would be to maybe pivot up top with a few guys, which I think there are a few players that are viable for that tomorrow, and then take chalk down low. But that kind of strategy just doesn't sit well in my stomach. When you're taking chalk down in that 6-7K range, you're talking about slappies, players that aren't used to being in contention, that you're relying on to go out there and not just hold on, right? This is not a US Open. This is a golf course that even with some wind, you're going to see -6 to -8 rounds. To go out there and be viable for Showdown tomorrow, you've got to shoot at least -4, and that'd have to probably be a -4 round with either an eagle or a bogey-free -4 rounds, or you'd have to go out there and shoot better than that. It might even be like a -5 round that you end up having to get to. So it's a tough scene to go out there and want to play these chalky guys down low, because like any other slate, they're a slappy, they're a lower tier player to begin with, and they've still got to go out there and produce from the fantasy point perspective. There's again a difference between a US Open final round showdown and then what you get at a Rocket Mortgage, a John Deere Classic, et cetera, et cetera. So know that scoring conditions are still going to be healthily under par. I'd expect in that 2 to maybe 2.5 under par range like we saw for today, which again puts more emphasis on the outside of the placement points and more so on how you're going to go out there and score for the final round. So guys up top that I like, Akshay Bhatia would make sense, even though he's going to be extremely popular. If I think he's got a good chance to win, then maybe you mix him in. Somebody like Cam Young, slightly lower owned, I've got him at closer to 30%. But if you think that he's got a good chance to put his name in the hat, then maybe you'd play him as well. And even as somebody that's playing Akshay Bhatia, now I'm not going to tell you yes or no whether I'm playing Cam Young, but just because I'm playing Akshay does not mean that I'm automatically fading Cam Young. So that's all I'm going to say about that situation right there, because even if you're just going up there and taking like 50% of both players, or even if it's like 60-40, whatever different permutation you want to go with up top, those sort of players are all viable, and you could go 100% on one if you wanted to. Hell, you could fade the top 2 altogether if you wanted to out there in lineups. Just know that you're going to have to take some stands. You're going to have to find some guys that you have some conviction with out there in that top 5 and top 10. And I think that Bhatia and Kim Young are both decent options for that. If you're looking to get a little different up top, I mentioned a few viable options to get some leverage in that 9-10K range. Min-Woo Lee would be one of the rare options you can get to, and it's not because he's out of position. -14 is just 3-4 shots off the top end of the leaderboard. It's because you've got Akshay, Cam Young, McNeely all up there at the top, right? 3 players that are even above him when it comes to the placement. The result of that is Min-Woo getting slightly overlooked. So if you're looking to get a little cute up top, Min-Woo Lee would be your option for that. But I don't think it's all that necessary, particularly if you're going to get different down there in that 6 and 7K range, like you guys know I love doing out there with my exposure. Next up, we got Erik van Rooyen at $9,000. Erik van Rooyen, I've got at about 20% ownership. So, him, our next player here, Cam Davis at -16. These aren't players that I'm actively getting leverage with. These are some of the conviction spots that I'm taking starting up there in the top 5, top 10 that I'm going to hope that go out there, shoot -4, -5, potentially even better, right? -6, -7 would be a pure lock out there to be optimal. But if they could shoot -4, -5 and hold on to a top 3, that would likely be enough as well. So they're getting some ownership, I think deservingly so, given their placement. And, Cam Davis is a champion at this course. Erik van Rooyen has just been a consistent monster over the first 3 days. Bhatia, right, we talked about his shining form heading into this event. Min-Woo, the low-round option that we're taking, you already said 3 shots off the lead, right? And he's only 14.5% owned. All these guys make sense to get to. Now, up top, there are guys that I think are inflated with the ownership. So I guess just to point out some of the higher end options, as you'd expect, I mentioned Cam Young at about 30% there, but Aaron Rai getting quite a bit of attention. I've got Davis Thompson at just under 20%. I've got players like an Eric Cole at just over 15%, a Stam Stevens in that same kind of range. And all of it is tied to your leaderboard position. The guys that are starting with placement points are going to be getting some attention. So that would include a Luke Clanton, a Troy Merritt, a Patrick Rogers, a Joel Damon, Hostler even at -10, JJ Spawn at -11 down here. All of those sort of players are going to be significantly higher owned than their counterparts. Now, of those guys that we just mentioned, I believe I'm playing 2, maybe even 3 of those players. Now, the other 7, 8 that we mentioned are all going to be guys that I'm avoiding in my player pool. So up top, I'm a little bit more willing to take on some chalk. It does not mean that I'm playing all the chalk towards the top end of the board. Just to give you an idea of these names, so Cam Young, Aaron Rye, Davis Thompson, the Fowler, Kirk, I'm going to include in this, Eric Cole. We'll stop there, like the 8K and above. I think I'm playing like 2 of those players that we just mentioned, and that's like the chalk up top. So it's not like I'm only playing chalk on my lineups, but I'm picking my 4 or 5 chalky guys. I'm sticking behind them. I'm going to play them probably 40, 50% of my lineups. And then I'm going to have some shots down there in that 6, 7K range that I'm playing in 10 to 25% of lineups. 25% are going to be some of my 7K stands. And then down there in that 6K range, usually top end of the 6K range, it's going to be like 10%ers, maybe even 15%ers out there, and a few players that I hope go out there. And in a few cases, they're not even starting towards the top end of the board. So I'll show you a few of those players right now. So who did we leave off with? So we mentioned the Cam Davis and Eric Van Rooyen love. Nick Dunlop, I'm taking at $8,100. Another guy that's starting towards the top there. And his ownership, though, is not out of touch because you've got an Eric Cole priced just $200 above him, and a Sam Stevens who's $100 cheaper, who's also at a higher position on the leaderboard. And even Jake Knapp, guys like Patrick Rogers at -13 are taking some attention away from him. So he's not going to be overly popular for tomorrow. Down here in the 7K range, I've got Neil Shipley as one of my cheaper, slightly leveraged plays at about 10% ownership. And what I like about Shipley has been his consistency. Even out there for round 3 when he didn't have his best stuff, he went out there and was a gainer in both of his ball striking categories, and just ever so slightly lost out there with the 2 short game categories. Rounds 1 and 2, he was an absolute laser beam out there with the approach play. And at the other events that we saw, US Open, Masters, he went out there and was doing much of the same as well. He's been a very good iron player in his small sample size, even in major championships. So for round 4 Showdown, I'll take him for a little bit of a bounce back. He's the kind of player that if he shot -5, might creep into the top 10, right? Might get very close to those top 10 placement points. And more importantly, we're looking for him to just go out there and score, which I think with his iron play, he's shown that he's capable of doing. When you lot down a little bit cheaper, I've got an earlier starter in Davis Riley. So, -11 is not going to get you that early of a tee time. If anything, it's middle to late in terms of tee time. But Davis Riley at -5 is one of those earlier starters. He's only about 4. Excuse me there. I was having a Pepsi before, so it got me there. But yeah, Davis Riley, as I was saying, is only about 4.4% projected owned. And what you like about him is his birdie or better upside. Those guys that are starting early, they maybe aren't as engaged as the guys going off later. I think they also get the slightly worse end of the draw when it comes to the wind conditions. However, they also have the liberty of not playing with as much stress. They can play with more freedom. They can take aim at more pins. So while Davis Riley is definitely capable of just going out there and laying a flat egg, like a lot of the earlier starters are going to do out there tomorrow, they also, I think, have a better chance of posting a super low score. Now, a super low score would be something like 8, maybe 9 under, even 7, 8 under par would likely be a slate cracking performance and could make or break the large field GBP. So in large field lotteries, players like Davis Riley give you that kind of upside. They're the kind of guys that can get to that kind of score because they'll take aim at pins, unlike some of the later guys. And the added bonus to that is that in those big lotteries, you need players to get leverage. You need to find a spot to go out there and beat, 5, 10, 20,000 other entries out there for round 4 Showdown. And Davis Riley at sub 5% ownership is a player that can give you that leverage. I also like a Peter Malnati, a Joe Highsmith for that same reason. And both players, believe it or not, are top 70 players on the PGA Tour when it comes to birdie or better percentage, which in this field are both top 20 in the field when it comes to birdie or better percentage. So if in terms of guys that made the cut, they're top 15 when it comes to birdie or better percentage. So if you're looking for guys that just make more birdies than their price tag, that go out there and can fill it up when they get hot, that's what you're going to get with these two $6,600 golfers. And you can see, right, 2.6% projected ownership on Malnati. I've got Highsmith at 3.4%. And Highsmith, I actually bet against today. I took a prop under for him on birdies or better. And the only reason he went under, he hit the ball beautifully today. I had to counter sweat him the entire time, is because he was missing from within 10 feet the entire day. It was from 4 feet at times. It was a 3.5 footer, just a bunch from that 7 to 10 foot range that I have to assume that he makes tomorrow. So I'm taking him for that bounce back. Definitely somebody that is due for some putting regression. And like I said, if you look at the season-long standings, Highsmith was probably the most surprising for me. He's top 70 on tour. And then Malnati's right up in that range as well. But that's all I've got for plays. I'm going to catch up with any of your comments in chat. And if not, guys, that's what I've got for DFS here. And I'm going to give some closing thoughts before I go over to the questions that we have, if any. And I'll say that it's all about lineup construction for round 4 showdown, right? We can mention all these plays we want. Again, these live streams are not about just giving you guys plays. It's more so about your actual lineup building process. And for round 4 showdown, I think you've just got to really hunker down on how many chalky guys you want and how many pivots you're taking in each lineup. So if I was hand building, if I was doing this with an optimizer, I'd be doing it the same way. So, and I'm going to explain it in both sort of veins here. So first off, you probably want at least 3 pivots in every single lineup. So actually, sorry, let me put it this way. You want at least 3 chalky players in every single lineup, and you want at least 2 pivots in every single lineup. So I would say you want either 4 chalky guys and 2 pivots in every single lineup, or you want to go 3-3. So, maybe you push it to the 4 chalky guys just because the weather, I think, favors the later starters. But I wouldn't have 5 guys starting in the top 10. And I certainly would not have 6 guys all starting up there in the top 10, top 15. I would limit it at 4. However, I would have at least 3 in every single lineup. So if you're hand building, you might just want to have a checklist on the side that says, how many chalky guys do I have, right? You get to 3, you're good on your lineup, but you don't want to go over 4. If you're doing that on an optimizer, the parallel for that would be to set a group, right? You set a group with all the chalky guys. You say, I'm at least 3, but at most 4 players from this group. Then you go and you take the rest of the player pool and you say, I want at least 2 players from here from at most 3 in every single lineup. You can set up your player pool to give you that kind of lineup and set up your optimizer to give you those kind of lineups for your GPP. So that's what I would do. That's how I would build for your GPP lineups. A lot of times, right, we go through a hand build, go through some of that. That's more so the holistic process to use, which will probably help you out for some of you 150 maxers or even guys that are using an optimizer for like 50 kind of lineups. You only have 7 minutes left, so we're going to go through these questions quickly and then talk through some of the props. And so, yeah, it looks like I'm going to go a little bit past 10, but hopefully by not very much. Where are we at? Zalatoris withdraw was okay for me. He wasn't going to do anything at DFS. So if you're talking about DFS, he wasn't going to do anything good for you anyways, right? Whether he withdrew, whether he went out there and he was finishing in like 40th, 50th place, maybe it was the difference between you min cashing or not, but long term, it's peanuts out there for your ROI. So yeah, I mean, it's not ideal by any means, but it actually helped me out for props. It gave me a little bit of money back on props that he probably wasn't going to hit. He only hit 2 outrights, and they were Minwoo and Rai. Well, I'd say you're feeling really good about one of them. One of them's got a pulse. I took Minwoo as well, of course, as I'm sure you know, Odell. Hopefully, you can get one of those 2 to cash. And I guess selfishly, if we can get Minwoo to cash, right, if we chose him out of the 2, we'd both get in there. 307 is only good for $20 in the drive the green. Yeah, dude, it's one of those weeks, huh, where you've got to score probably 600 plus to win. It's going to be a fun one. Who do I like to leap into the top 10? So if I had to give you one player for that, I'd say like Neil Shipley, right? He's outside the top 10 to go out there, leap himself up. He's close enough to actually do that, and a player that I think is playing well enough. When do I think about Rico Hoy or Hoey? Not sure how you say the last name. I'm not sure I've heard any announcer say it the right way. I think that he's a decent bomber sort of player, high upside flyer, but honestly, he's nothing more than a GPP flyer. Kind of like a Davis Riley, a Highsmith, a Malnati that we mentioned before. He's not the kind of guy that you're playing in more than like 10, 15% of lineups at the most out there. And you're not taking in like a big single entry kind of build. So he's probably got even more risk than those kind of guys that I mentioned. The guys I mentioned, I would think would be safer plays because of how they're playing so far. Rico, he's decent this week, but outside of that, it's been a lot of missed cuts. So I'd be a little bit more hesitant there. All right, let's talk props real quickly. So we've got 5 minutes. I'll probably go a little bit over time and still be okay here. And in terms of your stat averages, they got a lot better for round 3, which at least in terms of your bogeys, it went down about 0.6 per round. Your birdies went down about 0.3 per round, which was expected with the higher wins. But with the better players out there and not as many scrubs, amateurs, you saw the bogey average go down. You saw a lot of the outliers go away, and that's going to be present out there for Sunday as well, of course. So even with some wind out there, it's going to be a little bit less blustery tomorrow than what we had for today. You're going to see some pretty decent scoring. So from the scoring average perspective, I think it's going to be about 2 under par. That would be my projected field average. The birdie average will likely be about 4, maybe 4.25 per round, like you had for today. Bogey average is likely around what it was today, if not closer to 2 per round, maybe slightly above 2, like 2.1 per round, something like that. But then your fairway and green average, I don't think you're going to move very much. I'd say that fairway average is probably going to stay around this like 9, maybe it goes slightly up with the lower winds. And then your green average, I would say would probably stays the same, even with the lower winds, only because the greens are going to dry out slightly after all the rain that they got for today. So I don't think it's going to change all that much, all things considered. The main thing that I guess I didn't mention with this, birdie average, right? The reason why I think it might go down to like 4 per round is mostly due to the wind direction. So it's not like pins, the last day pins, maybe some of your par 4s are slightly harder, especially like some of your shorter par 4s probably aren't in bowls like we had for today. The issue is this wind direction. And if you look at it, it's going to the south and southeast, which is directly into the wind in all the par 4s. The last time we saw that was round 1. And just to remind you guys, that's when it only played 1.1 under par. So it was by far the hardest out there in day 1. And it's not going to play to 1 under par, right? It's still probably going to play a whole 2 strokes under with the better players out there making it into Sunday. But it is going to be harder to go out there and pick apart those par 5s. So I took a look at the Underdog board before. I didn't look at the Prize Picks board fully yet, but it didn't look like I loved a lot of the value because they took the board from yesterday and they bumped up almost all the birdies by at least 0.5, sometimes an entire birdie out there in cases. And the strokes are pretty similar, but the birdie board is way higher. And given the fact that I think the par 5s, the holes that you're making most of your birdies on, are going to be much more difficult, it makes it really tough for me to want to go out there and want to play a lot of overs. In fact, I think that there might be a few spots that we could take for some fades. So that would be my recommendation. I don't know if we're going to have time to really put together too much for a slip. More so wanted to be able to give you guys these stat averages to go out there and tack things for yourself. And I'll give you guys the consensus for the board. So yeah, we're probably just looking at this, right? We got to look at Prize Picks and Pick 6 as well. We're not going to have time to give you guys an actual slip. But what I'll do here, of course, right, if you want my slips, check the Patreon page. That's where I'm posting all my action that I'm actually playing out there for tomorrow. And my player poll, of course, is on there on the Patreon as well. But here I'll just give you guys a general consensus. It looks like there are a few unders and strokes that I'd be considering, particularly for guys that are in contention. And I don't necessarily want to give away too much, but I'll just spill the beans on EVR. He's one of those players I'd be eyeing. And Eric Cole would check that box too, right? He's a contention, another guy. And the later starters too are, in my opinion, getting the better side of the draw. Those would be like some of the ones that stick out, like maybe Jake Knapp at 69.5 as well. Just to get a little comparison on some of the players, right? Eric Cole is 0.5 lower. Let's see, what is EVR than Jake Knapp at? So EVR is at a whole entire stroke lower, and then Jake Knapp is also at 69.5. So if we were just going to kind of limit this to the ones that were line value compared to the other site, we'd take these two and take them. But let's see if there's anything else that's a stroke discrepancy. So let's look at Cam Davis. Cam Davis, okay, so it's the same. Actually, so it's a 0.5 discrepancy, but I kind of like Cam Davis for Sunday, especially because he's won here before. He's gone under that Sunday pressure before, and he's not playing from ahead. It really feels like a good spot for Cam Davis to challenge that lead. That's why I like him for the showdown perspective so much. He really fits that well. I know we said we weren't going to do a slip together, but I guess I'll just say that. Pick your favorite two of the bunch. I guess you can do a 3-man if you want to, out of these like 4 or 5 props. Something like this. I don't know if I'm going to play all these. I don't know if I'm going to play any of these, but these would be my leans at this stage. And at least compared to prize picks, I think they're all value, right? Except for Jake Knapp. Maybe we take him out there. In terms of the prize picks board, it looks priced even higher than what we had on Underdog. So I guess the birdie board's more realistic, right? You have guys like Ricky at 4.5. Mav as well. They're at 5 birdies over there in Underdog. So maybe you could find a few overs to take, like maybe even like an Eric Cole at 4.5, a Fowler at 4.5 with how much he likes this course. But the strokes lines were even lower than what we had on Underdog. So I think the way to do this, because I think it's going to play even into the wind on the par 5s. Like I don't think it's going to play terribly difficult. So if you're going to take positive stances, just make sure that you take your stroke stuff on Underdog and then your birdie stuff on prize picks. And then you can make sure to take care of it. And it'll be vice versa. If you're trying to take fades, right? Then you try and attack the opposite side of that value. But just make sure you're using the right board for the certain prop that you're taking. That would be my recommendation out there for round 4. And like I said, on Patreon's where you can find all of my action. And I gave you guys a few leans there as well. So let's go through this. So the board over here in pick 6, you've got guys like Cole over there as well, like a Ricky Fowler. Look at this. They don't even have that much of an option up here. So I like to look at this. I would say there's potential fades to take here. So just like based on first look, the Sam Stevens over on strokes, maybe even a Cam Young under at 5.5 birdies. Like the only reason I'd say under 5.5 is, Cam Young playing fantastic golf. It's into the window on the par 5s. Now, maybe a better way to approach this would be to go like a Hostler, maybe even like a Rogers or something like that. But normally they have a lot more options for us on here. So let me see. Let me refresh this. Make sure that those are the only options that we have. Yeah, it's unfortunate. So yeah, I guess they're being a little bit lazy with their board out here for tomorrow, which is unfortunate. I guess just for the sake of the live stream, we'll say these two. But truth be told, I probably wouldn't enter very much over there on the pick 6 side. Let's see. Any questions? Where are we at? You're playing $100 single entry, so you have 4 chalky guys and 2 pivots. Okay, you're asking, actually. So I would go in like a single entry, probably 4-2, like slightly chalkier. Just because first off, you can afford to in single entry. Second off, you want to eat more of that weather edge that you can. But yeah, you need at least 1 or 2 spots that you can definitively say if they hit, they're going to move you up the leaderboard. So I don't think both have to be sub 5%, but sub 15% on at least 2 players and probably at least sub 7% on one of them is what I would go with. Who am I taking as a pivot with Malnati? It's Highsmith. Yeah, thank you for calling that out, man. Who is my fade of guys in the top 5? So yeah, great question. So I'll give you one. I'm fading Aaron Rai. Aaron Rai, I just don't love him at Birdie Fest. Now, he's proven it wrong to this stage of the week. However, if I have to find a reason to fade somebody, that was what I went with out there for the last round. So, yeah, I'm not playing him. Let me take a look at the shots gained, too. I feel like they weren't that flattering for Aaron Rai. So, yeah, he's still gaining a bunch with the flat stick, which feels like he's kind of putting above his baseline to this stage. So, yeah, that's what I'm counting on. What else? Your boy Juan going low tomorrow. Yeah, dude, I love Rom. He's a character out there. He wears his heart on his sleeve, which I love. You like that with Jordan Spieth too. That's why I like watching him. He could do it, right? If he does it, he'll get a nice payday out of it. So I'm sure he's going to shoot for it. The one thing we know about Juan, the reason why I love playing him in Showdown, Malnati is kind of the same way, but Juan's probably even more so the case. Siwoo Kim used to really be like this. Siwoo's gotten a lot calmer over the last year or so. He takes aim at every single pin. Like he just doesn't give a shit, right? He goes, you know what? I'm going to go out there, win or lose, go out there and try and hit it to 2 feet. And sometimes he does. You see that quite a bit. He hits a lot of darts to sub 5 feet. He could certainly go low. So that's all I've got, guys. Appreciate your support here on the channel as per usual. Go ahead, smash that like button if you guys haven't already, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of the content to come. Next week, we got the John Deere Classic. So I'll have my course breakdown out early tomorrow. Course breakdown out early, and then afterwards, DFS and betting preview out there tomorrow afternoon. So subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of that content when it drops. Best of luck with all of your content, all of your exposure out there on Sunday, I should say. And let's go out there and finish this week strong.